we are, thank you. So we are going to begin the meeting of the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the San Francisco Creek Joint Powers Authority. Today is Thursday, June 22, 2023 at 3:30 p.m. And would the clerk like to do roll call?
Yes. Director Eisenberg,
Here.
Director Rebecca,
Here.
Director Pine,
Here.
Directors Greer and Directors Greerstone and Directors Ruth Holmes are not present today.
All righty. So we are going to move directly onto the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
Great. Do we need to do a roll call?
Yes. Director Eisenberg,
Yes.
Director Rebecca,
Yes.
Director Pine.
Yes.
Moving on, we're now on to the approval of the meeting minutes for May 25th, 2023, the regular board meeting. Do you have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the May 25th meeting.
And a second?
Second.
Great. Roll call?
Director Eisenberg,
Do we?
Yes.
Sorry, do we do public comment?
Oh,
Oh.
I'm so sorry. Thank you for reminding me. Is there any public comment? I don't see anyone here. Is there any online?
do we have any requests for public comment on the minutes approval? I don't have any requests to speak at this time.
Wonderful. So now we're on to roll call. Approval?
Yep.
Yes.
Director Rebecca,
Yes.
Director Pine.
Yes.
All right. Moving on, this is now the time when the public has an opportunity to speak on any item that's not on today's agenda, and you have up to 3 minutes. And because there's so few people, maybe we can even give you more if there's anyone. So I don't see anyone here. Is there anyone online?
Does anyone online wish to make a public comment for any items not on the agenda at this time? I have no request to speak.
All righty. So now on to number 5, information items. We have now before us the Executive Director's Report. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make this brief. There are just a few small updates on our progress on the hydraulic memo that you received at the special meeting. Just a quick recap of that. The most salient piece of information about the hydraulic reanalysis was the conclusion that the creek capacity is about 25% underestimated. So while it is a difficult thing to learn, it is a difficult thing to get our brains wrapped around, it's very important that we take into account those changes that we now understand, or those physical realities that we now understand. And going forward, we want to make sure that that analysis is thorough, complete, and accurate. And so we are putting together a scope of work, actually sort of as we speak. That scope of work is being drafted and will be released. We are looking for consultants who have a familiarity with the issues, preferably with the watershed, but who have an objective stance, who can do a critical evaluation first of just how Mr. Zhu has done his work. We may go forward with more detailed analysis if that seems merited after we get the first analysis of how he did his work. So I wanted to make sure to reinforce the idea that with this information, we just know that we need to take into account these new creek dynamics that we're now understanding. We do not have a definitive direction about a design change or the scope of those design changes. When we have more definitive information, we will come to the board with more definitive recommendations for a direction. But until then, the board and the public should just know we are taking everything into account, but no decisions or clear directions are being contemplated at this time.
Great. Are there any board questions? Yes.
Well, yes, I unfortunately was out of town and the family. I couldn't be here at the meeting where this was presented, but this follow-up, reading the press, primarily the focus seemed to me, just reading it, was that, that the the bridge somehow had to state that they couldn't be replaced. That was my take on it. And clearly when I read this, and I think probably like any other project of any kind, when you're making revisions or mistakes, in this case, it says that so 25% underestimation. It is a big number. However, that happened in their calculations or the modeling, but it says if no adjustments were made in other parts of the project, then there could be more flooding. So the way I read it is the bridge can come down and be replaced. Other adjustments will be made, and then we're okay.
That is one option. The bridge can be modified, the bridge can be taken out and replaced with something as planned if there are downstream
That's what I'm
modifications.
saying.
Yeah,
There are other adjustments.
there
And
are
so
many adjustments, and
there's plenty of room for adjustments. And one thing I also, just in my recollection of the discussion of Reach One way back, when that was now becoming a more concrete reality of this is what it's going to take. And then, but still discussion about Reach Two, that there was a lot of concern from some people about walls, almost like the aesthetics, like we don't want no walls. We just want a natural flow. I have to say, for us in East Palo Alto, the walls are okay. We'd rather have some walls and be protected than aesthetically looking at a natural creek that is going to flood us. So I never heard any complaints from my community saying, if we have to adjust and put some walls, that would be okay. And the way that the walls are there now, they're not huge. They're not, I think sometimes, in fact, our former, this is the last thing I'll say, our former public works director, and I forget what word he used. He actually said, using the word walls, it's not accurate, and it generates this visual of having like concrete walls, like just like this ugly thing, right? So I forgot what he called them. He had another word for it, which made sense to me. It was a little more technical, but it just said, I forgot what it was. I'll have to call him because you're not with us anymore. But again, so for us, I think before also was this idea that we could never put a wall and Reach Two, period. And I don't think the JPA committed itself one way or the other. At least I didn't. I didn't say that, we absolutely will have no walls, right? Or yes, we have to have them. It will depend on all the analysis that is done and what kinds of adjustments. Because I'm sure that, if you have walls, you can stop the water. It bounces off. That's what we have in only one portion of Woodland on the East Palo Alto side, because it is lower than the Palo Alto side already. But one section does have walls, and they were constructed, I don't know when, but they do the job. They're kind of nicely rounded, and then other places don't have them. And the place where it breached did not have them. We constructed one overnight with sandbags, 3 feet, because we thought, if this happens again in the next week, then we know where it's going to happen, basically. But anyway, I just want to make those comments based on, at this point, just having read the press and the emphasis on almost like it's a doom scenario and there's, nothing that can be done and that. So anyway, thank you.
I hope people don't think this is a doomed scenario. It's challenging, but it is something we can solve. People are really good at solving problems, and I have faith that we will come together and find a solution to this complex situation. In addition to those complexities, we are also working closely with the Army Corps of Engineers for the channel widening work. They've recently raised the issue of their concern that their BCA, the benefit cost analysis for the channel widening, is because the real estate costs are so expensive in this area, it's starting to look like it doesn't pencil out according to their economic requirements. There is a caveat that they are now given some latitude, that economic benefit is not the only yardstick by which they are to measure the value of their projects. So we will continue our dialogue with them. We will see how we can move forward, but I did want to put the board, make the board aware that there is this potential that the CAP 205 program may no longer be the optimal fit for funding this part of the project.
Yeah. And if I may, thank you, Executive Director, and to my colleague, Director Abrica. Is it Abrica or Abrica?
Either way.
Which is, do you prefer?
You know, I'm really fine with it.
Which is more correct?
Well, you know, I was born and raised in Mexico, so I'm used to being called in Spanish or in English, and that's what the difference
What is it in
is.
Spanish?
The Spanish is abrica and English is
Abrica.
abrica, so I'm used to it.
I got it, Abrica. I took a little Spanish in my time, so I think it's not too much to ask to pronounce someone's name correctly, right? You know, I'm talking about me, you know? Yeah. Yeah, well, I appreciate your flexibility while also trying to be respectful. So cool. Okay, so what I want to say in response to you, Director Abrica, is having looked more closely into this issue, I think, I think we shouldn't get all of our information from the press. You know, the press seemed to focus on this one potential solution, which is walls. And, without stating an opinion pro or con walls, upon further, investigation and discussion with experts, it seems there's a whole wide range of options, some of which may be more efficacious. For example, there is a big problem of sediment coming from upstream Stanford, and with more sediment, the creek has less capacity, and that impacts all of us. And as most problems, it impacts mostly the more vulnerable, lower income communities, which we are, as one of our missions, is to be most mindful of East Palo Alto, as environmental justice requires. So, and is the right thing to do. So, I think that I'm confident that our staff will explore many different alternatives, and I think there might be a lot of good that can happen with further work with Stanford. I say that in particular because since, I need to disclose this anyway, since the last meeting I met both with the fantastic professor who came and presented a couple weeks ago. Her name is Professor Sukale. Is that the right pronunciation? Jenny Sukale, I think, and she actually had a lot of interesting thoughts, and I hope that the JPA will consider her when talking to consultants whom to hire. It wasn't my place to ask her if she's interested in doing the work, but she seems to really know what she's talking about. I also think, this is just my perspective, that she seems to reflect a really nice independence, academic independence from her employer, which is so satisfying and nice to see, because maybe some of her conclusions may be that Stanford needs to do more. And in that regard, I also met with some folks at Stanford to discuss, basically their approach to and rationale behind what they're doing with Searsville Dam. And all of this is, of course, related, because if Stanford can better manage, the sediment, there will be fewer problems down the road, and that could take so much pressure off, Palo Alto, and especially East Palo Alto. So I'm really looking forward to an expanded discussions of this, really growing our relationship with Stanford. I'm committed to assisting with that. I think they were a little bit surprised by how I didn't appear to be drinking the Kool-Aid, even though I am a very loyal Stanford alum, class in 1990. Despite my love of Stanford, I still think that they could be doing more. But I'm not a scientist, so I don't claim to know exactly what they could be doing more of. But it's my non-scientific perception and what I'm hearing a lot from my community in Palo Alto, that they could be doing more. So that might be a good, approach as well. I think that these problems, as a type 1 Enneagram, it sounds like maybe some of my colleagues are too, I'm optimistic that the solutions are there. and I think it's good news that we were flagged this now rather than later. The last thing we want is more flooding, especially in neighborhoods that are hit the hardest. So I'm really grateful for this, and I appreciate your updates. I am, as I said, I'm very optimistic that this is in good hands. I think speaking with, Professor Sukale might be interesting, and just moving forward on behalf of our communities, because it does seem that this bridge is problematic, but that there's a lot of things we can do, and replacing the bridge seems like it's something that's very important to our community. So I think, as my colleague said, replacing it with making other adjustments, whether downstream or possibly more likely upstream, that would be welcome, So how about you, Director? Do you have any thoughts?
About the third-party peer review. So the timeline for getting that results back is 2 months?
It may not take that long, but I'm estimating that it might take that long to do a draft and then have an internal discussion and then finalize the draft for sharing with the public and with the board by the time you come back from your summer recess.
Right. I mean, I would urge us to try to expedite that as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we definitely have to have a sense of urgency as we deal with these
Yeah,
issues.
I think we all think that.
Absolutely. So I am aiming for information to sort of coalesce, both whatever may happen with the survey and whatever happens with the third-party analysis before or around October, which is when we start to do our winter emergency preparation and coordination with the multi-agency coordinating committee, et cetera. So I'm hoping to have that information in hand for our design work, for our emergency preparation, for our winter preparedness communications, and coordination with our public works staff colleagues about how we can do, hypothetically, some interim temporary flood risk mitigation measures. We haven't met with them yet. We're scheduling a meeting, so I don't know what those will be yet. But all of this is to inform those actions.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as long as we're having this conversation, I do want to, I think for short term, which I don't know, it could be 10 years at this point. We don't have the money yet. But let's say it's 5 years, and there could be another event like we had. At least for us in East Palo Alto, and I checked with Public Works, and this is the second time we've done it. We'll probably put up walls. We have to put up a wall along there, just like the walls that we have further south. And because that worked, right? It'll bounce the water back in. And, so again, just theoretically, hypothetically, had we built a wall there, 3 feet, that would not have happened, I think. The water might have spilled over if we had had a 3-4 feet wall. Okay. Anyway, I may be wrong, but that's what we did that night because we felt if there's another big storm like this could protect. Now, obviously, it was too late. Garages had already been flooded in several apartment buildings, but that's like everybody's known that's been the weak spot. I don't know. Were you going to say something about the walls?
I was just going to say that may be one example of a kind of temporary approach. I know that your public works director has retained the services of a geotechnical firm to evaluate not only the erosion that might have happened there, but also the sort of dynamic around the bank stability near University Avenue. So that is a complicated location. I hesitate to comment about the long-term viability of even a temporary wall there until your geotechnical consultant
Oh, yeah,
comes
well,
back
I'm not
with-
going to go build it tomorrow, but I am the kind of person that sometimes will react that way. If I've gone through a couple experiences like that with the creek over the, we're just going to go in there and do something. I don't care who owns the property, if it's going to be flooding there. So I'm only saying that because somehow, I think we have to plan, I think Menlo Park also, because they're also on the lower end than Palo Alto in that area, that we need to plan to protect ourselves in the short term while we debate all these pros and cons of what's going to happen.
Right.
Because
And we are
the-
convening a meeting with the public works directors and their staffs to talk exactly
Right.
about that.
yeah, okay.
What are the things we can do safely, quickly, effectively when we anticipate something coming?
And legally, I think.
And
we-
legally,
I
and
think
legally.
we do
Thank
have
you.
to care who owns the property.
No, well, look, let me, don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I threw that out there in reference to getting permission to go in and do something. Of course, I care who owns the property. I'm not going to go and violate their property rights. But it's to point out what at some point the public safety is just as important to get and then get permission to do something. That's all I'm saying. Because that's the way I feel. The public comes first, property comes second. But of course, we'll go through the procedures of getting permission, whatever permission we need to get is to protect people. Anyway, so that, I look forward to that, to those efforts for us to plan temporary measures, quote unquote temporary, and not wait until this whole things. Because, talking about Stanford, I would say, if tomorrow Stanford said, you know what, we'll build some basins upstream, then, well, that may not be, I'm just saying if they did that, they could if they wanted. They could do that if they wanted. All right, and if they did that, this whole project on Reach 2, we have to remember, we're not even planning it for the 100 years. We're planning for the 98. Why? Because we can't be assured that the whole Stanford project is not going to make it worse. So, yes, I think Stanford should do that, because if they did that, then we wouldn't be having this discussion at this level at this point, and we would be protecting a lot of people. But, we have to go through all these different studies, and I know there's different points of view. I'm just stating my view. Because when we looked at all the 17 alternatives way back, when we hadn't done anything, and that clearly was also one of the alternatives. And I know there's controversies on all sides, but we're talking flood management. From the flood management point of view, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so that I'll just leave it at that, because I want to clarify a couple of those things that are, one is that there is an urgency for short-term measures, because if we see another event like this in a couple of years, then we're going to be reacting the same way we did. At the last minute, something happens, and then we'll be back where we are. And people were looking at us like, you haven't done anything, which in fact would be true. We're not doing anything. We're doing this big debates for the long terms, and we're not doing anything. Anyway, I'll stop there.
I think those are, I wonder if it makes sense actually to invite Stanford to a future meeting. I saw their presentation. It was enlightening to me, but it was enlightening to me, in my opinion, how little they're doing versus how much they could do. Just putting it out there, transparency is my thing. I think it might be helpful to have them present, maybe, if the other directors agree. I do think, despite my
Well, they've done that before.
right, but it might be a time, okay, I'm just saying it might be helpful again, because sediment is really the problem, sediment. And, if you read the book, The Great Thirst, or is it The Big Thirst, it talks about how civilizations were taken out not by floods, but by salt and other sediment. Really, sediment is civilization killer, is a civilization killer. And, despite, regardless of whose fault it is, who has the ability to fix it right now is Stanford. So it would be an interesting conversation to have that, and it would take the pressure off of us. It absolutely would take the pressure off of us. So, I think as we move forward, having science-based solutions is really, the best approach. Science-based solutions, and our public is so smart. They, and educated. They're going to, they will understand science-based solutions. And I think we're all saying that. So I think it's great. And Director Penda, do you have any other, and before we go to the public? Yeah. Are there comments from the public? I look optimistically into the crowd.
We do have a request to speak. Anyone?
No, you don't
No
want
one? We have a few online who would like to speak.
Wonderful. Okay, great.
So
Go ahead.
Zania Hammer?
Hello, can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I want to emphasize overall the vital and urgent importance of going ahead with the Reach 2 projects. We cannot count on upstream detention and Stanford to solve this problem. You need the Reach 2 projects to increase capacity of the creek in this reach. Without those Reach 2 projects, no amount of upstream detention is going to be sufficient to help us. We need to increase the carrying capacity of the creek so that the creek can carry the water flow. So those projects are vital and important, separately and independently from Stanford upstream detention. So second, support your efforts to verify the model, all the assumptions, all the data, the flow data, the hydrograph data, the roughness assumptions, the sensitivity to the roughness assumptions, all need to be verified, makes a huge difference. And what I really want to focus on in my comments today, and Director Rebecca, it very much relates to the area that you were talking about, where there is a temporary 3-foot flood wall, just directly upstream of University between, across from Manhattan, between Euclid and Manhattan, that area there. And that area overflowed on December 31st, impacting Menlo Park and East Palo Alto, as you know. So I took a walk in that area, and if anybody who is here hasn't done that, I highly recommend it. And it's really important to see what's going on in that area. What you have in the creek is a huge cement structure in the creek. It's an old retaining wall. It's between Euclid and Manhattan. So, and it actually sticks out into the creek, perpendicular to the water flow. And it's a block long, and it's as high as the creek itself. And it even has a staircase with railings and steps. Imagine what that does to the quote unquote roughness of the creek in the model. And that wall is right there, right where the creek is narrow, right where the creek turns, and it is directly downstream from where it overflowed at Oak Court and Euclid Avenue into Menlo Park and East Palo Alto. And Director Rebecca, it's like, it's just, East Palo Alto just should be doing everything possible to get that wall removed from the creek. It's inside the creek bed, and Menlo Park as well. It's just, it is such a huge problem, and it will be so improve the flow capacity and the roughness of the creek as soon as that wall is removed. And I just want to call everybody's attention to that huge concrete monolith inside the creek at a critical point. So Director Rebecca, you're building temporary 3-foot walls on the flood walls on the creek banks. When there is a big cement structure blocking that creek, it needs to go, and the sooner the better. So I was pleased to see that you were talking about geotechnical analysis. I very much hope that that wall can be removed as soon as possible as part of the channel widening, and it will help everyone. Thank you. Go check it out if anybody hasn't seen it. It's really stunning that you have that thing.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, can I quickly respond to that? First, I want to say thank you so much, Ms. Hammer, for your comments. I'm saying the Stanford work needs to be done in conjunction with the replacement of the bridge. I'm not saying it shouldn't be instead of the replacement of the bridge. That bridge has to be replaced, absolutely 100%. But maybe can staff speak to the, that concrete structure there, like why it exists and if we can get rid of it? That does sound problematic.
Sure. The existing site channel widening number 2 is where Ms. Hammer is speaking of. This is a concrete structure that steps into the creek channel almost like a ziggurat. It was built, we think, in the 1950s, perhaps. It is an artifact of someone's garden, maybe at some point. We don't, not really clear. It is slated as part of our site widening too because of its strategic location. It is a human-made impediment in the creek, and taking it out enables us to reform the creek bank there, lay the creek bank back at a slower, a more gentle slope, and revegetate it with natural vegetation, with native plants. It provides us an opportunity to not only widen the channel, but also to restore the natural ecosystem of that area. And it's, as Ms. Hammer noted, it's a block long. It's really big. The top of the bank there is right across the street from Sandhill Properties, and we are in communication with Sandhill Properties. And at the very top of bank by the road, we're talking about not only having that restoration effort, but also designing and implementing a small city parklet there, like a small open space that may support a more inviting environment to wait for the bus, a community billboard, some landscaping, some attractive urban amenity in that area. So it is, yes, it is an impediment in the creek. Yes, it's already part of the project. And importantly, that location will be a place where we will be doing some significant natural restoration and revegetation.
Are we able to do that before the next storm season?
No,
Even just taking it out
no.
because of financial reasons?
Yes, and regulatory permitting authority.
Huh. I assume that Director Abrika, you're in favor of that too. It sounds nice.
I've always been in favor of it.
Yeah.
I knew it was part of
Yeah.
the project, but this is where we run into these permitting situations, and, that comes first, unfortunately.
Sounds like a really nice opportunity for East Palo Alto to enjoy some.
Well, Menlo Park too, that
Yeah, and Menlo
area,
Park,
that whole area is a weak area where, something needs to be done in the short term. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying what, but otherwise it's going to happen again. It's happened 3 times already in
And
that area.
short-term solutions will not in any way impede or preclude longer-term solutions. And again, with Public Works professionals, we are talking about how we can, what we can, where we can implement very short-term temporary actions to protect our residents before and until our projects are complete.
And there's probably records, somebody's liable, whoever built it. Obviously, they probably built it without any permission.
Yeah, that could
And
be.
maybe they think they own the I don't know, but, I'm sure there's some records. County's got to have some records, or the city of Menlo Park. I don't know. We weren't a city
Yeah,
in the
maybe Tess
50s,
has
so
some
we don't have
historical
any
data here,
records.
has some historical knowledge.
So it was built by the Palo Alto homeowner who owned both sides of the creek and the entire creek part of it. And then later, he sold the site on the East Palo Alto side. It was subdivided, and that was purchased by Sandhill Properties. We have permission from Sandhill to do the work, and
Right.
it is part of the project. But I think we just want to verify with the new hydraulics every bit of the project.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for that note, yeah.
It would be great if that, you could look into expediting that, since that is an obvious problem area. And, yeah.
I assume this is part of the no regrets changes?
It is, and the question remains, is this going to be part of the CAP 205 funded work, or are we going to do this work self-funded through the Valley Water Measure S funds or other grant funding? We will work that out in the coming weeks. I'll have more information, and we'll let you know as soon as I know more.
It'd be nice if the board could vote on something like that, which is the better approach. I wasn't aware of this. I'd love to see it, actually, if maybe even Ms. Hammer wants to show it to me, or a staff member, whatever's appropriate. Yeah, great. So you know how to contact me, r.eisenberg@valleywater.org. I love making site visits. It's one of my favorite things. And yeah, it sounds like this is when you can identify a low-hanging fruit. I love the idea of picking the low-hanging fruit, especially for a vulnerable area, a vulnerable community, a community that has been most of the time the recipient of the unfortunate, unwelcome consequences. This sounds like a really nice opportunity for environmental restoration and environmental justice.
The plan has been and continues to be that this is the work that follows the Newell Bridge work, working from downstream to upstream. So as soon as the Newell Bridge project is finished, and maybe even contemporaneous with that, we can do the channel widening or some of the channel widening. We do need to get permits from our regulatory agencies, so that is a critical component. We have to make sure that they are happy with the way we are protecting the habitat, our plans to maintain fish passage, and to prevent any damage that would or could occur during a significant construction activity.
We still have more public comments.
To hear more public, this is great. Thank you for allowing us to respond to them too. I don't know if that's normally the way, but I really believe in community participation, so I appreciate this opportunity for the public to speak and allow us to follow up on it right away in real time. So thank you. Who's next?
Tom Rindfleisch.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk to the board and to the JPA staff. I want to say that from the point of view of Crescent Park Neighborhood Association, which has been the major, had the major damage from both the 1998 flood and the New Year's Eve flood, that there is no question that we have got to remove, replace, upgrade the Pope Chaucer Bridge. That is the cause of the overflows. And if we do the upstream retention that Stanford is talking about with Searsville or other pits, we can take off approximately 800 to 1,000 cubic feet per second from the 100-year hydrograph, which gets us down to a flow of on the order of 7,500 cubic feet per second. That is why we have got to finish the Reach 2 modifications as planned currently, but which may have to be modified by putting walls or some other arrangement. The problem at the bend near Euclid and Manhattan in East Palo Alto has been identified for 15 years as one of the major problem areas in protecting the downstream people. So this is a system problem that has to be done as a system. You can't put postage stamps here and there and expect them to solve the creek problem. There is no temporary solution for those of us in Crescent Park for which the Pope Chaucer Bridge is a problem. So it is essential that we keep our eye on the ball of doing the Reach 2 project. The other thing I want to talk about is that I fully support the work that Jack Hsu has done in trying to learn from the New Year's Eve event what the problems or what the calibration of the creek is. What he did is nice work, but it raises lots and lots of questions. I've communicated these to the to Jack and to the JPA and other people in civil engineering at Stanford. And so I don't want to go into the details here, but I want to mention a class of things that are part of what needs to be verified in this independent review of the water district, latest water district model. First of all, the USGS changed their estimate of the flow 3 times, from 7,400 cubic feet per second to around 6,500 cubic feet per second, now to 5,800 cubic feet per second. Why is that? What does that tell us about what's going on with the creek at the gauge that is causing this wild fluctuation in the estimates of the flow. And so you need to get the USGS involved in this to explain to us what it was that they found about the creek behavior near the gauge that caused these vast changes in the Q or the flow rate. That's going to make a huge difference in terms of what the risk is downstream, because the calibration was assuming some flow number, but that number has to be accurate in order for the recalibration to be accurate. Second, Jack used the Manning N factors as a way of adjusting the roughness of the creek. This is an overall change to the nature of the creek, but I have to point out that this was the first major flow in the creek over 3 years, and lots of debris and other trash and stuff accumulated in the creek, which has to be flushed out. And so there's a question of what are local blocks that were caused by moving this stuff down the creek, as opposed to systematic changes in the creek profile. It's really essential that we understand whether the Manning N factor approach to this recalibration is the right thing to do, or whether we should be looking at other local blockages that have to be handled differently. I'm thinking back to the '98 flood where a large oak tree fell in the creek right around Oak Court, just up from this river station 141 where the concrete wall is. And that caused a backflow up to Palm Street and some of the other sides on the Palo Alto side that caused some overflows. You can approach this either from a Manning N factor point of view or from a local flow point of view. And the most appropriate thing is a local flow point of view in that case. And so we need to really investigate that very carefully. The third thing that I want to mention is that the flood walls that were put in above Pope Chaucer Bridge some time ago kept the flow from going over the bridge itself, but caused it to back up with a bigger, deeper lake that overflowed at Hale Street and Seneca Street. It also caused upstream backup of the storm sewer system on Ginda Street. And so there are many, many things that are involved in this recalibration that have to be looked at very, very carefully. That isn't to say what Jack did is totally wrong. It's to say that there are lots of ways to look at this very complicated system that is what we call San Francisco Creek. And so I've sent a fairly long list of things to the JPA and to Jack to include in this follow-up objective review of the recalibration. So I'm really looking forward to moving this as forward as quickly as possible. We have another El Nino event probably coming this coming winter, which may or may not entail more rainstorms and heavier rainflow. That's one of the things that the El Nino tends to forecast, and we need to be ready. There's nothing more we can do in the upstream of Pope Chaucer Bridge to protect the neighborhood. They're going to sit there and lose sleep every night that a rainstorm or atmospheric river is projected to come aboard. And so we need to get this problem solved ASAP, and we need to do it in a systematic way that protects everybody. We should have no delusions in the long term that what we do is going to protect everybody forever from overflows of this creek. With climate change, we don't know what the 100-year flood is really going to be. And so we have to do the best we can do to try to increase the capacity of this creek and to do what we can for upstream detention. So I really want to push hard on expediting this review process and revising the REACH 2 plan as absolutely quickly as possible. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for your comments. Jim Wiley?
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, helping my father celebrate his 100th birthday tomorrow, so I'm joining remotely. I do want to have 2 or 3 points, though, real quick. One, the concrete wall that Xenia talked about and Tom referenced did not hamper the flow during the New Year's Eve flood, based on the observations that I made personally during the peak of the flood. There was no overflowing above the concrete wall, but there was significant overflowing right below it. And I have videos of the flow as it went through that area. The water simply went very fast. I suppose the manning roughness of that structure is extremely smooth, and the water was going twice as fast there than anywhere else. So the hydrology does not support the need to remove that concrete structure based on the New Year's Eve observations. I have no problem with removing it. It's ugly, it's horrible, and I have no problem with doing work there, but it's not because of the hydrology. It's because it's ugly. And you can add that to the list of questions to ask on a review. Why did no water come out 100 feet above that supposed blockage, but tons of water came out just below it? I mean, 5 feet to 10 feet downstream from that supposed blockage is where all the water came into East Palo Alto. Now, of course, there was a little bit of flow up at Oak Court, but that's 200 or 300 feet upstream from this supposed blockage. The second thing I want to point out is that Jack-Su, in his slides that he presented during his presentation a few weeks ago, said that if you do remove the Pope Street Bridge, you would need 3 to 6 foot flood walls for nearly 2 miles on each side of the creek, all the way up. And I can assure you that very few people are going to support 3 to 6 foot flood walls or top of bank structures. When you're dealing with a 1 foot or 2 foot, nobody's going to get too upset as long as you don't disturb the root structure of the plants, as long as they're individually staked or something like that. But giant flood walls are not going to be supported by the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Xenia Hammer?
Yeah, just real quick. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, great. I found Jim Wiley's comments really surprising. The map that he provided, included in Jack-Su's presentation, shows a significant overflow at Euclid Street, which is immediately upstream of where that huge cement retaining wall in the creek starts and sticks out perpendicularly into the creek. So it is very much a contributing factor. And as far as the details exactly how, I think both Jim and I can agree that we can leave that to people who have more detailed expertise. But it very much, there was flooding immediately upstream of that wall per the map that Jim Wiley provided to Jack. The second thing is Jack-Su's presentation does not mention 3 to 6 flood walls. There is a mention of 3 to 4 feet flood walls. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Tom Reinfleisch?
This is exactly why we need expert analysis of this. What Jim Wiley said about the pinch point, it's pinch point, not the Manning coefficient of the concrete that the concrete wall imposes on the creek. That has an effect of backing up the water all the way to the streets like Palm Street and Maple upstream, and raises the water surface elevation. And so this, as I said, this has to be looked at as a system, not as little bits and pieces here and there that all you do is change those and magically everything happens. Water flows in a way that is well understood for more than 100 years. And the model of the river analysis system that the Corps of Engineers has put together is the standard way of analyzing this. And what we need to do is to make sure that model, which is quite complicated, ends up having the appropriate parameters and calibration so that we can trust it in figuring out what to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I have no more requests to speak at this time.
Thank you to the public speakers. If any of you would like to follow up by email, I know we all welcome it. So it's just really satisfying how much expertise and passion and wisdom there is in our community. It's awesome. So having completed number 5, unless any other director sounds, no, we now proceed to closed session, where the conversation will be about public employee performance evaluation regarding the executive director and conference with labor negotiator. With that.
Actually, on that item, I did have a
Yeah.
question on the meeting section, which is separate from this discussion. That's still part of 5.
Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's great. Yeah, because I think we
So I
were
just-
talking about the hydraulic stuff, but there was
Is that okay?
the safer bait. Well, actually, on the calendar for presentations that I noticed, for the East Palo Alto one has only the safer update. I just feel like having an update on Reach 2 is also important. I mean, that, because that's really what's on people's minds. I mean, the safer bay, yes, but, so if you could add that, if you don't mind, on the calendar. Yeah.
So September 28th,
No, I
me.
think it said August for us.
right, hosted by East Palo Alto. Safer update is in August. September 28th is a Reach 2 update. And I'm thinking that by that time, we will have more complete information. I can certainly provide an interim update in addition
Oh.
to an update on
Yeah,
the
so
Safer Bay
even an
project.
interim. I'm just saying, because the question's going to come up about Reach 2.
Absolutely. We'll make sure
So-
that this is in your, the
And-
staff report to the board,
Yeah,
and we'll make sure we cover that.
yeah, I would say that way,
in our
even just
verbal report.
projecting to September, October, but at least people will know. Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
Thank you, Director Abrica. So.
So
do we-
on item 6, we will need to take public comment before going
Oh,
into
thank you
closed
so much.
session.
Yeah, so is there any public comment with regard to what we will be discussing in closed session?
Do we have any requests to speak on agenda item 6, closed session for public employee performance evaluation, title executive director? I have no requests to speak at this time.
Okay, then is there a motion? Do we do it that way? Yeah.
No, we don't do any version. You just adjourn to the
so-
closed session.
Great, so we don't need to vote on
Yes.
adjoining. Okay, great. We are now
completing 3 years, completing 3 years. So, yeah, I just want to congratulate you and thank you for the work and your staff, of course, too. But, you know, you took the helm during the pandemic and still kept working through. So thank you very much.
And I'll just second that. Congratulations on completing 3 years and so ably steering the JPA during the difficult time. And looking forward to your continued good work.
I'll third it. Is there a thirding? Yeah, I mean, I'm being so new, you know, I actually express gratitude to my predecessors too for finding you and hiring you. It's, you know, it's not very easy to find, you know, talent like yours with your vast experience. So and your staff has been great too. So newbie, and I think it's going great. And I am very grateful to my colleagues too. I think that we're really well positioned for the success that the community is really relying on us to have, and in good hands. That feels really good. Awesome. So with that, I think we are ready to adjourn to
I'm
our
sorry,
next meeting.
if I can interrupt, I apologize.
Yeah.
There was a problem with the muting on the Zoom, so I just want to re-ask if there are any public requests to speak on agendas items 7A or 7B. We have no requests to speak, and I will just go ahead and say that the board did approve both agenda items 7A and 7B unanimously, 3-0.
Thank you for that. And really thank you to, if there's anyone still listening, thank you to the community for paying attention and offering your feedback. And I do want to visit that part of the creek, you know, and invite anybody to reach out to me, and I'm sure my colleagues feel the same way. It's so helpful to interact with those whom we represent and serve. So with no further ado, then, I think we are ready to adjourn to our next meeting, which is on, when is it? Which I think is until August.
Correct.
Oh,
We're in recess until August.
well, don't be a stranger. I guess is what I want to say. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, and have a good July.
Thank you.